Hello, this is Kylie with Fem and Flow. I hope you're having a beautiful day. This is one of my favorite episodes yet. Today, we are going deep into white hole embodiment, what it means exactly, and the mechanics behind the term. When I say white hole embodiment, I am not using it as a poetic metaphor. It's a literal, energetic state and vibrational architecture. The more we understand how it works, the more clearly we can stabilize in it, live from it, and design from it. It's our natural state outside of this realm, but we enter the earth realm through a veil of amnesia and forget our true power and divinity. So we aren't learning this for the first time, we are remembering and coming home to ourselves. Let's kick it off with some background so we can tie this all together. I've talked before about how Earth was originally seeded as an experiment that asked, if we disconnect from Source and God energy, can we find our way back? That question eventually led to an experimental white hole realm flipping polarity into black hole physics, which caused humanity to seek God through endless black hole and bridge narratives. Some of these black hole aligned methods include seeking God through technology, fame, money, control, and dogmatic versions of organized religion and worship. At some point of the spiral up, we reach bridge phases, parts of the spiral that can be messy and confusing as we start to explore as seekers. We awaken and we start questioning what is going on around us and why are we here. Some bridge methods of seeking God may look like plant medicine journeys, meditation, energy work, and vision quests. The bridge can hold a mix of truth and distortion, so the goal is to keep learning, honing our discernment, and continue to spiral up. Some may loop for a while, tying their beliefs with their ego, while others may mistake a distortion for truth and get caught in one of those little traps. It's not easy. As we continue to spiral up, we start to see things we thought we once fully understood from higher octaves, and more layers of nuance unfolds. And there are collapse cycles. We may feel fully aligned, then experience a brief collapse. This is often a clearing cycle. As long as we re anchor through safety and honesty, the spiral is still upward. The bridge phase is powerful and necessary. It's how we come out of the black hole and spiral up into truth and enlightenment. At first, we may mistake the bridge for the final destination and think life is all about spiritual seeking and finding peace. But there is a destination. It isn't an infinite journey. We eventually get to a layer of the spiral where we start to see this big picture pattern. We see the experiment's question at hand and understand how that quest to finding God took so many different paths and got translated in so many varying ways depending on the individual's paradigm and frequency. At a part of the spiral, when you are moving from the bridge phases to the white hole framework, you realize, wow, this whole time I was finding the way back to me, the version of me fully aligned with God energy. We get lost to find ourselves again. Once we find ourselves, we also realize this path is not just spiritual, and it's not just about mindset. It clicks, oh, okay, wow. Okay, this is legit my reality. Okay, duh, that makes sense. This is a physical thing. Once this clicks, it is time to start the process of white hole embodiment and actually getting our physical bodies in a place to anchor in this higher dimensional God energy. We realize all of these bridge methods of spiritual seeking, like meditation, plant medicine, and constant exploration of both universe and self, are a beautiful and helpful part of the journey. But there is a different state of reality, the white hole, where we live in full coherence as divine beings. There is no more seeking something outside of ourselves because we remember and fully align again with our infinite nature. This veil, fragmented black hole version of self we relate to on earth is not truth. The path back to God is the path back to ourselves, our true selves. When I say white hole embodiment, I'm talking about a state where our bodies, our tone, and our fields are no longer running on black hole distortion. We stop letting the outside world and outside frequencies control us, and instead, we become the signal. We become a white hole beacon and node of coherence. We anchor in God. It pulses through our body, our fascia, our field. At this point, we are being fueled by Metatronic light, or the architecture of Source. I'll go deeper on this in a moment. Unlike black hole reality, which is built on polarity, survival, and fragmentation, white hole embodiment is built on overflow, coherence, and architectural design. It's a quantum shift from doing to radiating, from controlling reality to transmitting tone and letting reality reorganize around you. In the bridge phase, we talk a lot about manifestation. We conceptually start to understand that we can attract things into our life. After white hole embodiment, we realize that manifestation is just a dangling carrot, a breadcrumb trail, a preview designed to help us remember how reality actually responds to frequency. In white hole embodiment, we don't need to make vision boards or manifestation lists. Our tone is so coherent and magnetic that our body, our field, our frequency, all are working in tandem to project a reality that mirrors our exact tone. I've referred to this before as instant manifestation, but now I see it is so much more than that. It's having an energy field so coherent that our consciousness flawlessly projects our reality in a way that mirrors our inner world. It is bliss, it is fun, it is your dream life, fueled by God and directed by you. You may see this pattern if you listen to older episodes. I may talk about a concept and later see even deeper truth and nuance. I often see that my original interpretation wasn't wrong, only limited. This is part of the spiral up, and I'm sure you will see this reflected in your own journey as well. One of these topics I recently revisited from a higher octave was the concept of Merkabas. I believe in a previous episode, I mentioned Merkabas were our light bodies that allowed us to travel dimensions essentially. One of my new online friends, Elle, sent me a video about the Merkaba that made me think bigger on this topic. It seemed like divine timing because that topic had been knocking at my head recently, and it dawned on me how deeply the Merkaba related to white hole embodiment, a topic I had been talking about a lot recently. And when I say knocking, it's almost like my brain starts blinking a notification saying, there's a new file in your cloud. Do you want to download it? Or it's like I see a little string of thread poking out and I start to pull until this amazing concept unravels. And honestly, perhaps it's like a metaphor for the tapestry of the universe. Literally, sometimes I am squealing as I write my scripts, absolutely in awe and totally delighted about how so many things connect. But, anyways, thanks to Elle, that led me down the path of exploring Merkaba's deeper, and then my thread there unraveled into the concept of Metatronic light, which expanded and gave deeper insight on concepts I've talked a lot about in the past. On previous episodes, I've talked about the 9 different dimensions we can currently access energetically. In white hole realms, we can fully access all energy from these dimensions. This is the energetic scaffolding of physical experiences. The flow of this energy is what makes white hole realms expansive, coherent, and wonderful. The scaffolding is the architecture of Source. When we have full access to this flow of energy, it is akin to what we archetypally call heaven on earth, and we are in full energetic alignment with God. This energetic scaffolding and architecture is Metatronic light. Source energy is origin, Metatronic light is architecture, and God is Metatronic light. When we talk about God, we aren't just talking about a vast field of pure energy. We are talking about this energy in divine motion. We are talking about the architecture that allows us as divine beings to create our own reality, to live eternal lives. And at the center of that divine motion is the Merkaba. Your Merkaba is the light body structure that holds your divine design. It's the energetic engine that receives light from God, Metatronic light, and spins it into your personal geometry. It is a sacred geometric vehicle that connects your physical body to higher realms of consciousness. The word Merkaba comes from ancient languages. Mer means light, Ka means spirit, Ba means body. So Merkaba literally means light, spirit, body. It is the field that allows those three aspects of you to operate as one unified, coherent system. So basically, what I've been calling the Holy Trinity, our soul, consciousness, and body, is essentially the Merkaba. But the Merkaba is the Holy Trinity activated and spinning in coherence. Consciousness is the animating awareness of God moving through form. It is not separate from God, it is an expression of God. In white hole mechanics, consciousness is coherent light. Let's break it down. Light, in its purest Metatronic form, is structured, intelligent, and is divine order. Consciousness is the awareness that rides the light wave, and God is the source of all light, all coherence, all awareness. And just to clarify, when I say consciousness, I don't just mean human thought or self awareness. I'm talking about the organizing intelligence of life, the awareness that exists in all coherent systems. Plants have it, water has it, crystals have it. It's not thinking, it's responding with intelligence. It's awareness expressed through form. Consciousness is God experiencing itself through different fractals of form. It's the awareness of Source expressing through everything, from galaxies to blades of grass. It doesn't always think, but it always knows in its own way. So when you're consciously aware and energetically aligned, you're not just connected to God, you are channeling God through coherent light. You are becoming the architecture. The Merkaba is the living structure of the Holy Trinity. Soul, consciousness, and body. It's a system in divine motion. Your soul is the unique tone of God you carry, your fractal. Your consciousness is God's light, filtered through that soul, your living awareness. And your body is the vessel that lets the awareness become form. There is only one field of consciousness, but it expresses through countless lenses. Your consciousness isn't separate from God, it is God moving through the lens of you. And when those three aspects, soul, consciousness, and body, come into alignment and begin spinning in coherence, that's when your Merkaba activates. That's when your field becomes creative and embodies Source. And that's what white hole embodiment really is. Visually, the Merkaba is made up of two tetrahedrons, one pointing up and one pointing down, interlocking and spinning in opposite directions. The upward facing tetrahedron carries masculine energy, electric, transmitting, solar. The downward one holds feminine energy, magnetic, receiving, lunar. When they spin together in balance, they create a dynamic, multi-dimensional vehicle of light. Think of this as your divine engine, your energetic structure for traveling between dimensions, anchoring higher consciousness into form, and generating coherence. This perfectly mirrors what I've shared before about the balance of divine feminine and divine masculine energies. We see this fractal relationship across all creation. It's polarity in divine motion, white hole polarity play, not in opposition, but in co-creative harmony. This is what gives birth to life, miracles, beauty, and texture. The Merkaba spin creates a living vortex or divine motion around your body, a toroidal flow, a sacred current. When your Merkaba is fully online, Metatronic light doesn't just pass through you, it organizes reality through you. This is how we collapse waves in the quantum field into particles. This is how thought becomes form, because your tone was clear enough to receive it. The Merkaba makes creation possible, and when it's spinning in harmony, your entire life becomes a reflection of your light. When your Merkaba is activated and spinning in harmonic resonance, it allows you to collapse waves in the quantum field into coherent form, travel between dimensions of consciousness, stabilize your tone so your outer life mirrors your inner clarity, and maintain integrity in your toroidal flow, your energetic circulation system. Like I said, the Merkaba is not just a transportation device, it's a translation device. It takes Metatronic light and translates it through your geometry into physical embodiment. When it's spinning cleanly, you don't manifest through hustle, push, or planning. You create from clarity, coherence, and inevitability. You don't go out and get it. Your tone collapses it into form. In white hole embodiment, the Merkaba becomes your axis, your orbit, your transmitter, your throne. It's how you move through this world as light and form. Once it's activated, nothing can distort your tone without your permission. So earlier I said God is not just pure source energy. God is source energy in divine motion. It is the architecture of source, the scaffolding of the different dimensions. God is Metatronic light. When we speak of the quantum field, that is pure source energy, a field of endless strings of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Okay, so let me get trippy here for a moment. So, to add even more nuance to a topic I've discussed before, energy is actually not even vibrating at different frequencies until we observe it. As soon as we observe it, it matches our frequency, then turns into a wave of the same frequency, and then our Merkaba receives that wave and spins it into our toroidal flow, which is the energetic structure that surrounds and flows through our body like a living spiral. That wave moves through our torus. And here's the key. If the field is clear, if our tone is coherent, the wave doesn't get scrambled. It flows cleanly. The torus holds it, sculpts it, amplifies it. And when intention, coherence, and embodiment align, that's when the wave collapses into a particle. That's when the frequency becomes form. That's when what you feel becomes what you see in your reality. That is when reality starts mirroring your coherence. That's how we create reality. We create it from observing the quantum field with a clear tone, receiving the matching wave into our light body, circulating it through our toroidal engine, and letting the energy collapse into physical matter. So here's a breakdown. The quantum field is pure source potential. Observation is your consciousness selecting a frequency. Wave matching is when the potential becomes a frequency aligned to your tone. Merkaba reception is your light body spinning it into coherent flow. Toroidal circulation, the wave cycles through your energetic system. And then particle collapse, if alignment is clean, then the wave collapses into form. And this is manifestation or reality creation. This flawless coherence and reality mirroring our frequency is how white hole realities operate. In black hole and bridge phases, yes, we are still creating reality because we are always interacting with the quantum field. This is just how physical experiences work. But we are doing it from a fragmented tone and misaligned field geometry. In the black hole, our Merkaba is not activated. In some high bridge phases, the Merkaba starts to spin, but not in full coherence. When your Merkaba isn't fully activated or spinning in coherence, the waves still arise from the quantum field. You do still observe and pull in a frequency, but it can't flow cleanly through your toroidal field because the light body is either leaking due to trauma, distortion, or emotional fragmentation, or it's spinning inconsistently due to polarity loops and low coherence, or it's disconnected from the divine blueprint due to synthetic programming or control grids. If you want more info on that last one, you can listen to my episodes on the architecture of distortion. So in those situations, the wave gets scrambled. Thought forms mix with fear, doubt, programming, scarcity, and ego agendas. The wave still collapses into matter, but distorted matter. You manifest things you didn't fully mean, or get almost versions of your desire. The phrase, "be careful what you wish for," comes to mind. This phrase is so black hole. Black hole manifestation or reality creation is form without coherence. The quantum field responds to observation and frequency, not worthiness or intention alone. Even if your Merkaba isn't active, your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and core frequencies still send signals, but they are being sent through a distorted transmission system. The wave collapses, but it's been bent, filtered, or fragmented by your own field. That's why manifestation can feel chaotic or unpredictable. Trauma patterns keep looping into your reality, and mindset work without embodiment doesn't shift your life. In the bridge phase, the Merkaba is partially online. We start to feel our field. We start to release distortion. We receive clear waves, but our toroidal field is not yet a pure conductor, so we sometimes create from alignment, sometimes loop into old timelines, and we feel the split between what we know is possible and what's showing up in form. This is the phase where we are often working through healing, repatterning the nervous system, and preparing to stabilize our Merkaba and enter white hole creation. In white hole embodiment, your Merkaba becomes fully active and your toroidal field is clean. You don't create from mental effort anymore. You observe with tone, receive the matching wave, and let your field collapse it into matter with elegance and inevitability. Thought becomes form because your form is already divine. That's the secret. You stop creating through distortion the moment your body stops distorting light. Now let me swing back to source energy versus God. I've been using the terms source and God interchangeably, but now I've spiraled into more nuance. God is specifically Metatronic light or source intelligence structured into harmonic order. So it's kind of funny because I've talked about this before when discussing divine masculine and divine feminine polarity and the architecture of source. But now it hit me at a deeper level, I guess. Maybe that tracks along with understanding something versus actually embodying it. Source energy is the raw, undifferentiated essence of all that is. It is the eternal field of divine presence that births all creation. It has no structure, no polarity, no form. It is the infinite void and the infinite fullness at once. It is pure potential, pre-geometry, beyond light, sound, or thought. It is God before expression. You don't receive source, you dissolve into it. It is felt in moments of absolute stillness, unity, or grace. You are of source, but source is not directional. It simply is. Then, Metatronic light is source intelligence structured into harmonic order. It's the first light expression that flows from source into creation. But unlike synthetic or polarized light, Metatronic light carries perfect, uncorrupted geometry. It's light that builds, organizes, heals, and remembers the divine pattern. It is the light of the tree of life, the original pre-distortion current. I'll talk more on this in a bit. It powers your Merkaba, your sacred geometry, and the toroidal field. It knows how to move through your body and reweave your field without you needing to direct it. You don't dissolve into Metatronic light. You become conductive to it. So here's an analogy. Source is like the infinite Son of God. Metatronic light is the golden architecture of sunlight focused through a crystal. One is omnipresent, the other is functional coherence. And then in our white hole work, source energy is what white hole embodiment emerges from. Metatronic light is how the body stabilizes it. You channel source through intention. You embody Metatronic light through geometry, nervous system safety, fascia flow, and tone. We see the scaffolding of Metatronic light when we talk about the different dimensions. We can currently access 9 dimensions energetically, and they create this architecture. Dimensions 4 through 9 are non-physical, and 3 through 1 are physical. These dimensions aren't stacked like stairs. They're more like nested fields of intelligence, each with its own frequency, geometry, and purpose. It's how pure energy is created into matter. Like I said, the architecture. The 9th dimension is the black or white hole that creates a universe. It is the point of singularity or the universal seed point. It is the portal generator. It is the point where infinite potential collapses into a new universal framework. Here's where this gets more nuanced because, like I said, I've been using the terms source and God interchangeably, but now I separate the difference. Source is the quantum field, is divine feminine energy, is just being or the isness of it all. And then God is Metatronic light, the Elohim, divine masculine energy, doing, architecture of source, and divine in motion. As soon as pure source energy is put into light scaffolding or creates energetic architecture, energy goes from being to doing, and we get the first divine polarity. Therefore, Source and God create the first divine polarity and create the first example of sacred union. The ninth dimension is source energy. It is the quantum field. It is the raw, undifferentiated essence of all that is. Then, once this pure source energy gets structured into Metatronic light, that is when the eighth dimension emerges. As above, so below. Just like our bodies have Merkabas that spin light into form, so does this dimensional structure. The Merkaba spins light from the ninth dimensional pure source energy into eighth dimensional Metatronic light architecture, or aka God. This is where source light becomes creation. And like I said earlier, source and God create the first divine polarity. Source equals ninth dimensional energy, and God equals eighth dimensional energy. The spin of divine polarity creates the Merkaba. The Merkaba is a sacred geometrical energy field, and I'll talk more on this in a moment. The universe and reality are created from the sacred geometrical engine in movement. This is another example of how we are fractals of God. Source light becomes creation, and then our energetic bodies channel this light to create our own reality. And both are engineered via a Merkaba. And like I said, the eighth dimension is Metatronic light. It is God. In the past, I've explained it as pure light, pure God energy. It is not necessarily just pure light, though. It is Metatronic light, light architecture. Everything in the universe is energy vibrating at different frequencies. This light architecture of the eighth dimension is created from 8 of the solfeggio frequencies vibrating in a harmonic resonance. And you could archetypally call this the voice of God. The ninth dimensional frequency is the ninth solfeggio frequency, 963 hertz. From the eighth dimension realm of God, we filter essentially by each solfeggio frequency to get the different dimensions. And by that I mean the seventh dimension corresponds to 741 hertz, the sixth dimension corresponds to 639 hertz, and so on. But I'll get into how this works more in a moment. The seventh dimension is the realm of sound vibrations. These sound vibrations become instruction sets, codes for evolution, service roles, and sacred responsibility. Sound vibrations create geometric patterns, and we see this reflected in cymatics. The sound vibration of the seventh dimension steps down into the sixth dimension, where the sound vibration creates sacred geometric patterns. Or in other words, the seventh dimensional vibration instruction sets create morphogenic fields, or energetic blueprints. Some morphogenic fields end up being created in physical matter, while some become energetic blueprints for primordial archetypes. So back to the Merkaba discussion. Source, which is ninth dimensional, and God, which is eighth dimensional, create the first divine polarity, and this polarity spins in divine balance, birthing the dimensional scaffolding that creates worlds. From the spin, light starts to vibrate, and vibrating energy creates sound, and sound is seventh dimensional. And yes, everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, and all of this vibration creates sound. Our human ears only hear a certain range. But because of this truth, you could say the entire universe is a beautiful song or symphony. This beautiful sound creates sacred geometry, which is six dimensional, and this creates the Merkaba geometry. The spin of the universe's Merkaba in divine balance, coherence, and polarity is then what creates miracles, bliss, and life, which is fifth dimensional. So, do you see the connection? The Merkaba of the universal dimensional structure is the creation engine of realms and experiences, while the Merkaba of our body is the creation engine that allows us to create our ideal realities inside these realms. We see this beautiful fractal mirrored experience everywhere. As above, so below. Now let's shift back to the dimensional structure. Like I said, the sound vibration of the seventh dimension steps down into the sixth dimension, where the sound vibration creates sacred geometric patterns. Or, in other words, the seventh dimensional vibrational instruction sets creates morphogenic fields or energetic blueprints. Some morphogenic fields end up being created in physical matter, while some become energetic blueprints for primordial archetypes. For example, there is a morphogenic blueprint for a cow, and there is a morphogenic blueprint for the primordial archetype of a sacred union. A sacred union is essentially two opposing energies in a balance of divine polarity. Because of what I said earlier, you could say the entire universe is created from the archetype of a sacred union. The cow shows up in the physical as a dense matter archetype, while the sacred union shows up in the physical as a living frequency archetype. And I'll go deeper into this in a moment. While the seventh dimensional sound creates instruction, and in the sixth dimension, this instruction manifests via sacred geometrical structures that form morphogenic fields or energy blueprints, the fifth dimension is the realm of miracles, life, bliss, beauty, and synchronicity. The fifth dimension is where these forms are given animating life force. The Merkaba creation engine brings it to life. Now let's talk about the fourth dimension. Like I said before, dimensions 9 through 4 are non-physical. They are essentially energetic filters. Dimensions 1 through 3 are physical. The fourth dimension can be viewed as a canopy over the physical experience. The fourth dimension is the realm of myths, cosmic archetypes, and the collective mind. You could call this the astral layer, the matrix, or the programming that sets the vibe of a physical experience. It takes Metatronic light and filters it in specific ways to create a certain vibe in physical fairy tale land. Let's go back to my cow example. I'll repeat it and add on. There is a morphogenic blueprint for a cow, and there is a morphogenic blueprint for the primordial archetype of a sacred union. A sacred union is essentially two opposing energies in balance of divine polarity, which ultimately leads to the Merkaba creation engine. The cow shows up in the physical as a dense matter archetype, while the sacred union shows up in the physical as a living frequency pattern or archetype. Seventh dimensional sound creates instructions that turn into geometric patterns in the sixth dimension. This creates morphogenic fields or energetic blueprints. When the energetic blueprint of the cow is filtered through the fifth dimension, it is given animating life force. It comes alive. When the frequency archetype of the sacred union is filtered through the fifth dimension, there's no change, but there is placement. The archetype of a sacred union doesn't come alive in the biological sense, but it resides there as a high-frequency relational archetype. It is felt as unity consciousness. the perfect balance of polarity expressed as energetic wholeness between masculine and feminine, both between genders and the feminine and masculine energy within an individual, and anchored as a template of harmony in the 5D relational field. Earlier, I said the fourth dimension sets the vibe of a physical experience. It is the programming and the matrix. When the cow goes through the fourth dimensional veil, it filters through emotional tone and realm specific archetypal memory. This dimension overlays emotion, ancestral memory, and collective astral residue onto the blueprint. The cow is no longer just animated, it now interacts with the energetic field of the collective. For example, in the earth realm, there's herd instinct, relationship to humans, and cultural symbolism. For example, sacred cow in Hinduism or livestock in Western agriculture. In 4D, it becomes an emotional symbol or projection point. The cow is felt and interpreted as more than just a being, it becomes meaningful. And then in 3D, it becomes a physically embodied animal: bone, flesh, breath, and matter. In 4D, the blueprint of a sacred union becomes myth, projection, and personal story. In the current Earth realm, sacred union filters through the human emotional body, picks up on desire, longing, heartbreak, karmic memory, soulmate archetypes, and enters the collective imagination as Romeo and Juliet, twin flames, sacred marriages, balance of inner feminine and masculine, mother child bonding, and even spiritual union with God. It shows up in all relational dynamics where polarity seeks resolution. The fourth dimension is also the layer where distortions occur in black hole physics. In regards to the archetype of a sacred union, this could distort into codependency, obsession, or wounding around abandonment or power imbalances. Then, in 3D, sacred union manifests as human relationships that mirror divine balance, and not always perfectly, as gendered or polarized energy expressions, as integration within your own body and nervous system, like yin and yang coherence, and balance of divine feminine and masculine energies, and also as real world relational harmony that mirrors your internal union. So, a cow is a being, sacred union is a frequency, the cow manifests as a body, sacred union manifests as a field. And in different realms or experiences, both will manifest differently depending on the fourth dimensional programming they pass through. This goes for nearly every aspect of experience, from the meaning of sound, the felt sense of self, the purpose of union, and the way color is interpreted. Because the fourth dimension is collective memory, projection, and collective symbolism. It acts like a lens or filter that determines how energy expresses in the physical realm below. The same blueprint may move through different 4D filters and become something entirely new. In the black hole Earth realm, the fourth dimension collapsed into inversion. That caused this higher dimensional energy to be distorted and humanity to no longer fully align with God energy or Metatronic light. We need to fully align and our bodies to fully anchor in this Metatronic light again. That is remembering and reconnecting to our true power and true divinity as God aligned beings. I often mention what I call our Holy Trinity, and this is how we operate as beings. Our Holy Trinity is our consciousness, our soul, and our body. We need all three of these things to be working in tandem. And like I said earlier, I now realize the Holy Trinity in motion is the same thing as the Merkaba. It is our divine creation engine, sacred geometry born out of the sacred union of Source and God in balanced polarity. And in my observation, it seems like the body is often overlooked. We focus on our mindsets, our beliefs, our emotions, which are all extremely important, but then don't realize this energy isn't just out there, it must be embodied. That means our body must be able to physically and energetically hold this Metatronic light. Unless that part of the equation is in place, we won't be able to fully create our reality and live in coherence like our white hole aligned soul is used to. Our Merkaba won't activate and spin in coherence. Our body is our energetic beacon, an energetic tool we use to create our reality and be nodes of coherence. You need this in order for your reality to start mirroring you. And not to go black hole on you, but it's no surprise society is set up to poison the body with ultra processed food, harmful chemicals, and alcohol, while also making sedentary yet busy lifestyles the norm. It's imperative we realize treating the body well goes way beyond surface level health or extending the lifespan. We need to treat our bodies with the utmost reverence because they are literally our energetic tool for how we interact in this experience and create our reality. You can't become a tool of coherence if your body can't hold charge or frequency. And this goes beyond eating healthy or getting movement, even though those things are very important. It also includes things we may not even realize aren't normal, like having braced muscles, tight fascia, and a dysregulated nervous system. You can view fascia as the connective grid that holds and anchors this Metatronic light throughout your body. When it's hydrated, soft, and open, light flows. But when it's dense and bound, the flow is blocked, and your body begins operating from a place of survival, not coherence. Braced muscles are your body's way of saying, I'm not safe here. This subtle tension sends a signal to your system that danger is present, even if your conscious mind feels fine. And the body responds the only way it knows how. It slows fat burning, it stores energy, it holds on to extra weight for protection. Your body isn't trying to sabotage you, it's trying to keep you alive. So instead of treating it like a problem to solve, what if we honored it as an intelligent response to incoherence? The nervous system plays a major role here too. When you're stuck in sympathetic overdrive, fight, flight, or freeze, your body is in constant defense mode. And that means digestion slows down, hormones get thrown off, sleep gets shallow, and fat burning halts. All because your system thinks it's unsafe to fully rest and release. But when our nervous system is regulated, our fascia is fluid, and our tone is coherent, the body doesn't just change, it rewires its default settings. It does this because we finally let it feel safe enough to become light again. Here's the deeper spiral of white hole embodiment. Number 1, realize the body is the tool. Number 2, restore its coherence and safety. Number 3, activate the Merkaba. Number 4, allow Metatronic light to flow. And number 5, architect reality from internal tone. So now that we went over the Merkaba, how it relates to the bigger dimensional structure, and what Metatronic light is, let's talk about how to activate the Merkaba and anchor in full Metatronic light. Once the body feels safe, the fascia grid is hydrated and silky, and the nervous system begins to reset in parasympathetic flow, it becomes possible for your Merkaba to activate. So here's how it activates. Number 1, through inner polarity harmonization. Like we talked about, your Merkaba is a balance of electric, which is masculine, and magnetic, which is feminine charge. It activates when your inner feminine, which is receptivity, softness, and breath, and your inner masculine, which is structure, presence, and holding, are no longer in opposition or collapse, but in harmony. And this happens through somatic safety, nervous system regulation, and emotional coherence. When your poles spiral towards center without resistance, the Merkaba begins to spin. And then number 2, through fascia softening and field regulation. The Merkaba can't spin through dense braced tissue. It needs softened fascia to act as a crystalline conductor, a regulated nervous system so the body isn't stuck in lockdown mode, and open energetic channels like breath, hydration, magnesium, and movement. And this is why healing the fascia and relaxing the body is so foundational. Your body grid must be structurally able to receive and move the Metatronic light. And then number 3, through coherent breath and stillness. Conscious breath activates the toroidal field around your heart. As that field becomes rhythmic, it begins syncing with geometry around your body. The spin, when coherent and symmetrical, is what wakes up the Merkaba. Here are some practices that tune the spin: rhythmic breath, meditation, somatic stillness, and deep presence. So, number 4, the fourth way it activates is through embodied frequency alignment. When you begin to live in alignment with your highest tone, meaning your choices, relationships, and actions match your soul's blueprint, the Merkaba naturally comes online. It's a reflection of coherence. You don't force it to spin, you become so true it spins on its own. And then the fifth way it activates is through activation codes like the solstice. Certain windows like equinoxes, solstices, and cosmic alignments offer downloads of Metatronic light that support Merkaba activation, but you must have the energetic scaffolding in place to receive them. So, what happens when it activates? You feel light in your body, your creation field becomes precise and fast, your energy becomes magnetic, you feel deeply safe, anchored, and plugged in, even as you expand. Your reality begins to mirror your tone directly. You receive higher dimensional intel effortlessly, and you become a stabilizing node of white hole architecture. And once your Merkaba is activated, the current of Metatronic light can move. It moves like tone through your body, like geometry in motion. It reorganizes your cells, it repatterns your aura, it rebuilds your magnetic field with divine ratios. As this current flows, your physical form begins to respond. You may start to effortlessly shed excess weight because your body is no longer braced or storing out of fear. You begin to return to your true tone body, the shape your soul has always held in the architecture of light. This body reflects the divine proportions of sacred geometry. Your posture may shift, your skin may glow, your fascia may soften, your eyes may sharpen because you're finally living as the frequency your system was designed to hold. This is what it means to be embodied in white hole coherence. Your form becomes an expression of your tone. Your body becomes a crystalline grid. Your presence becomes the field. So let's talk more about your true tone body. It's not a fantasy, it's not a goal weight, it's not based on trends, measurements, or appearance. It's the living form of your divine tone. It's the shape your soul takes when it's safe, coherent, and plugged into Metatronic flow. It will naturally reflect your ideal beauty because it is literally your own tone personified in white hole coherence. It's the version of your body that holds no bracing, doesn't store extra protection, moves freely, conducts light, and feels like you've returned home. You don't recognize your true tone body by looking in the mirror and judging. You recognize it by feeling the shift when your body starts to hum with truth. You may feel lighter even before the weight drops. You may feel more magnetic even without makeup. You may feel softer but somehow more powerful. You may feel rested, ready, and radiant because you're in flow. When Metatronic light flows through your activated Merkaba, your true tone begins to sculpt itself, guided by divine proportion. So let your tone become your temple. You only have to anchor the light. And side note, your Merkaba and how much Metatronic light your body is anchoring, it's not binary, it's not off or on. It will essentially load, you could say, if you know what I mean, like 0 to 100%. You could be at 90% for your Merkaba spin, but then once it hits 100, that's when your true tone body begins to sculpt itself. It might start before that slowly, but once it hits 100 for your Merkaba spin and for 100% anchoring in Metatronic light, that's when it becomes really easy and effortless. And like I've been talking about, I often explain that the bridge phase can be confusing and might not be super clear. If your Merkaba and your Metatronic light anchoring percentage is at like 80 or 90, that is still considered a bridge. And it can feel like you're making a lot of progress one day, and then the next, it might feel more confusing. And I'm actually going to talk more about my behind the scenes and how this looks in my own life on my Patreon. I'm just now launching it, so I'll link my Patreon if anyone's interested. So now let's talk about why all of this matters, and let's talk about the observer effect and quantum collapse. Now I want to talk about why it's so important to understand all of this conceptually with all of the nuance and detail. In quantum mechanics, there's a phenomenon known as the observer effect. It means that the moment we observe something, the moment we tune our awareness to it, the field of infinite potential collapses into a single outcome. Before we observe, everything exists in the quantum field. But the act of observing, especially with focused, coherent awareness, actually pulls that potential into reality. And this is why understanding your body, your Merkaba, and your tone matters so much. If you're observing from distortion, brace muscles, fear, doubt, control, through the lens of black hole mechanics, you collapse timelines into more of that distortion. But if you're observing from coherence, safety, light, harmony, clarity, you collapse reality into your true tone design. The more Metatronic light you hold, the more powerful your observation becomes. This is how timelines speed up. This is how your body transforms quicker. This is how your outer reality begins to mirror your inner field. So now I want to talk about the tree of life and the flower of life. I mentioned the tree of life earlier. I said Metatronic light is source intelligence structured into harmonic order. It is the first light expression that flows from source into creation, and it carries perfect, uncorrupted geometry. This is the tree of life, the original pre-distortion current. It powers your Merkaba, your sacred geometry, and the toroidal fields. The tree of life is a map of 10 spheres connected by 22 paths. It represents the architecture of the soul's journey through the dimensions, the Merkaba light body in alignment, and how consciousness moves from God to earth and back to God again. The tree of life is the divine path. It's the pattern that says, this is how light becomes you. It also represents the process of source descending into form and the path of return. The tree of life also represents divine masculine order, structured, stepped, layered. Then we have the divine feminine counterpart to this, the flower of life. Here we see another example of divine polarity or the primordial archetype of sacred union. The flower of life is the divine pattern of creation. It is a geometric pattern made of 19 interlocking circles and often drawn from 7 base circles, the seed of life. It encodes the template of creation, the womb of all possibility. It can be found embedded in nature, DNA, crystals, and ancient architecture. It represents divine feminine intelligence, nonlinear, abundant, multidimensional. It also represents the infinite matrix of potential. All geometries emerge from this pattern. The flower of life shows the interconnectedness of everything, the sacred symmetry of creation before form becomes fixed. Together, the flower of life holds the infinite code, the blueprint of all existence, and the tree of life is a path of embodiment within that blueprint. How soul chooses to reorganize itself inside form. They are nested realities. The flower of life is the field, the tree of life is the form. And this mirrors the divine feminine and divine masculine relationship I talk about constantly. Now let's talk about the flower of life and the dimensions of energy. The flower of life is the template, the infinite feminine matrix out of which all geometry and dimensional layers emerge. It holds within it the seed codes for all 9 energetic dimensions. Each overlapping circle in the flower of life creates vesicas, petals, and intersections, symbolizing how dimension builds upon dimension, frequencies layer into form, and all of reality emerges from a womb-like intelligence before it is structured. So, in summary here, the first through third dimensions are form, density, physicality, and those are the earthly rings of the flower. And then the fourth through sixth dimensions are morphogenic pattern, geometry, light structures, and these are mid-ring vesicas. And then the seventh through ninth dimensions are pure sound, harmonic fields, and source memory, and this is radiating from the core. The flower of life is the energetic womb, the frequency field that allows all dimensions to nest and express simultaneously. Now let's talk about the tree of life and the dimensions of embodiment. The tree of life, in contrast, is a roadmap, how a soul moves through the dimensions and organizes experience. The tree is how light steps down from 9D to 3D, and how, through coherence, it climbs back up via initiation, integration, and embodiment. Now let's talk about primordial archetypes and how divine ideas filter through both the flower and the tree. Primordial archetypes, like sacred union and eros, live as frequency patterns in the ninth and eighth dimensions, and then become vibrational instruction via sound in the seventh, and then morphogenic fields in the sixth. As frequency patterns, they are preform codes, essences in the flower of life fields, but they become embodied when they move through the tree of life path. They descend from the blueprint, the flower, into dimensional steps of embodiment, the tree, and take unique shape depending on 4D filters, beliefs, timelines, realms. So, sacred union, for example, is a primordial archetype, but it becomes a human relationship, an internal state, or even an artistic expression, depending on what dimensional pathway it takes to manifest. The flower holds the archetype, the tree determines the expression. And I'll swing back to this in a bit, but I need to weave in a few other concepts first. Now let's talk about the Fibonacci spiral. So, spoiler alert, you know how I talk about the three different paradigms: black hole, bridge, and white hole? The Fibonacci spiral is actually a bridge phase. In the bridge phase, the Fibonacci sequence is the spiral heartbeat of organic life. It's the sacred unfolding pattern by which source begins to express through form, through flowers, shells, galaxies, and even your DNA. It shows how geometry grows from center outward, how life expands in spirals, and it reflects harmonic expansion, not linear progress. Fibonacci is the way light unfolds in a dualistic realm. It's the rhythm of becoming, of remembering. So while the flower of life is the infinite field and the tree of life is the map, the Fibonacci spiral is how light begins to move through both, bridging the gap between distortion and coherence. It's not the final pattern, but it's the sacred bridge. It's not the final form of divine coherence, it's the memory of it. Metatronic spirals are the upgraded template, what Fibonacci is trying to remember. And more on this in a moment. Let's talk about dualistic realms quickly. I mentioned dualistic realms earlier, and let's discuss. Dualistic realms are the same thing as a black hole inversion. And then white hole coherence is in realms where the polarity is in balance. A dualistic realm is a system where there's a strong sense of separation. Opposites are treated as conflict, not complement. There's no innate feedback loop between the two poles. So, in a dualistic realm, like Earth has been under black hole physics, masculine and feminine become opposed. Life and death feel separate, not a cyclical transmutation. God feels external, not internal. Light moves outward, but it doesn't always return. Because of this broken loop, light cannot spiral in both directions simultaneously. Instead, it follows a partial spiral, which is the Fibonacci sequence. It's beautiful, but it's not fully coherent. That's why Fibonacci is everywhere in nature. Nature is working with the highest possible pattern available in a dualistic realm. The Fibonacci spiral isn't a distortion, it's a bridge spiral. It's what happens when light tries to stay coherent after the original template, Metatronic geometry, fractures. In white hole realms, everything spins in perfect reciprocity and coherence, inward and outward equally. But when polarity tipped too far towards imbalance, the black hole inversion, a few things happened. The original coherent spiral, the Metatronic spiral, broke. Light started to move only outward without full return. Geometry began to unfold rather than remain sealed. The memory of coherence remained, so light started tracing approximate patterns like Fibonacci. So the Fibonacci spiral is what light does when it's still trying to stay divine, even without full access to source coherence. It's like the best possible blueprint available inside the fall. It governs bridge systems like nature, growth, healing, becoming, but it never fully closes the loop back to source. So you may be asking, if the Fibonacci is a bridge pattern, what is the black hole pattern? So there is a black hole pattern of architecture, but it's not a geometry that creates. It's a mechanism of energetic inversion and collapse. The Fibonacci spiral is bridge geometry. It's the imperfect memory of coherence. And then the black hole pattern is not a spiral, but a consumption loop and implosion pattern where energy flows inward only without return or feedback. So I touched on this, but Metatronic geometry is the original divine coherent architecture. So now let's talk about Metatron's cube, Metatronic light, and Merkaba architecture. Let's connect a few threads because what I've been describing doesn't exist in isolation. The Merkaba, the light that fuels it, and the geometry it spins through are all part of a larger architecture. Enter Metatron's cube. Metatron's cube is a sacred geometric pattern made up of 13 circles connected by lines. Within it, you'll find every foundational shape in creation, what's known as the Platonic solids. These are the building blocks of matter, what all physical form is made from. And right inside Metatron's cube, you'll also find the Merkaba, those two interlocking tetrahedrons. So when we talk about activating the Merkaba, you're actually engaging with a much larger structure, a blueprint of divine order. Now, the reason this matters is because Metatronic light, which I've mentioned throughout this episode, is not just light in a general sense. It's structured light. It's source light that flows in perfect geometric harmony. And the geometry it flows through is Metatron's cube. You can think of it like this. Metatron's cube is the template, Metatronic light is the fuel, and your Merkaba is the engine. And together they form the living mechanics of divine embodiment. Here's where it gets even more interesting. We just talked about the Fibonacci sequence, that spiral we see in nature, in shells, flowers, galaxies. Yes, it is beautiful and reflects the natural unfolding of life, but it's still part of a dualistic architecture, an infinite outward spiral that never quite closes. Metatronic spirals are different. They are coherent. They spiral inward and outward in divine proportion. They return to source. And when your Merkaba is spinning in white hole coherence, it moves beyond the Fibonacci memory and starts to follow the Metatronic spiral. It becomes part of the original design again. When we say white hole embodiment is the return to original architecture, we are saying the loop is closing, the spiral is healing, and light can finally spin in both directions again. So before we close the spiral, let me give a side-by-side comparison. And this comparison is between a dualistic realm and a realm where the polarity is in balance. And remember, a dualistic realm is a black hole inversion, and a polarity in balance realm is white hole coherence. So the first thing we'll mention is relationship between opposites. In dualistic, we have conflict and separation. In white hole, we have harmony and sacred tension. Remember, sacred tension is when two sides of polarity are in harmony. This is what fuels the Merkaba spin. So then next we'll talk about the direction of energy. Dualistic is primarily outward, and then white hole is inward and outward at the same time. So the next thing we'll mention is the geometry. Dualistic realm is open spirals, which align with Fibonacci. And then white hole is closed spirals, which is a Metatronic spiral. Then we'll talk about manifestation. In dualistic realm, this requires effort, loss, loop patterns. And then in white hole, what we think of as manifestation just naturally emerges through coherence and feedback. Next, we'll talk about the experience of God. So in dualistic realms, the experience of God is externalized and sought. And then in white hole coherence, the experience of God is internalized and expressed. And that is white hole embodiment. The next thing we'll mention is how light behaves. In dualistic realms, it diffuses, leaks, and distorts. Then in white hole realms, it spirals, integrates, and creates. And when I say white holes are in constant expansion, that refers to their energetic generosity, but not in the same way as black hole expansion. Black hole expansion is externalized, pushing out, leaking, consuming. White hole expansion is coherent, radiating from wholeness with return flow built into it. It's a living spiral, outward and inward, a feedback system, a field of reciprocity. A white hole field is always generating new realities. Eros is constantly creating new spirals. Light is always moving but not leaking, it's spiraling in balance. Think of it like this: a black hole leaks outward and collapses inward. A Fibonacci spiral unfolds outward in memory of God. A white hole spirals inward and outward at once, expanding from coherence, returning through Eros. I'll talk more about Eros and the return of the spiral in a moment, but I want to tie this back to the conversation about the tree of life and the flower of life. The flower of life and tree of life are not Fibonacci spirals. They are Metatronic templates, divine blueprints of coherence. But in a dualistic realm, we often grow into them through Fibonacci spirals, bridge patterns that help us remember what divine order feels like. Fibonacci growth reflects a sacred unfolding, but one based on seeking, expansion, and outward motion. It's the spiral of becoming, not being. It's how life organizes in a realm where polarity is experienced as separation, where light moves forward, but it doesn't always return. The flower and tree of life, on the other hand, are static only in appearance. They encode the memory of full coherence, centeredness, balance, symmetry, and unity. They aren't just patterns. They're instructional fields that whisper to your cells, your DNA, and your light body, you are already whole. So while the Fibonacci spiral leads us outward, growing through experience, the Metatronic template draws us back to center. The Merkaba is what activates that return. It spins these static blueprints into living geometry, reconciling polarity, restoring coherence, and returning you to your divine design. We spiral outward to remember, we spiral inward to embody. And when both movements unify, the templates become real. The light becomes you. So, before we move on, I want to give an example of if a galaxy or shell were to form in Metatronic architecture. It would still have spiral form, but it would self-correct. It would grow in perfect feedback, not just outward trajectory. It wouldn't require entropy to recycle itself. Its growth and return would be simultaneous. In Fibonacci, the shell grows. In Metatronic, the shell knows. It grows in relationship to the center, never losing connection to source. Now let's talk about how this Metatronic light spirals back to center. This is the most electric thread of all. That is sacred creation, Eros. Eros is the inward motion of the Metatronic spiral. It's how Metatronic light feels as it returns to source through you. Metatronic light is the full spiral of creation. Eros is the inward spiral of divine return. It is the magnetic pull back to source, the embodied remembrance of union. It's not just sexual energy, though it expresses there too. It's the divine return current, the spiraling desire of light to know itself through form and then to reunite with itself through love. When your Merkaba is active, when your energy body is spinning in divine balance, your physical body becomes a vessel for sacred union. It becomes a conduit for Eros. Not the distorted version we see in the black hole matrix, but the original current, the animating spark of life, the charge between polarities that makes creation possible. Eros is the energetic bridge between polarity and unity. It's divine desire, the desire of Source to know itself through experience. It's the natural pull that brings masculine and feminine into creative motion. It's the subtle magnetic force that spins the Merkaba. Eros is the life force behind all forms of creation. You feel Eros when you're inspired, when something stirs your heart and makes you want to reach toward it, whether that's a project, a person, a truth, or a dream. It's the energy behind connection, beauty, intimacy, and growth. That's why Eros is sometimes called the creative impulse of God. And now, while Eros isn't just sexual, sacred sex is one of its most powerful expressions. Not because of the physical act alone, but because of what's happening energetically. When sex becomes sacred, when the body is open, coherent, and safe, it becomes a collapse of separation, a remembering of original union. Two Merkabas spinning in harmony create resonance. They generate a charge in the toroidal field and circulate Metatronic light through the body. This opens the field to a new creation. And I don't just mean biological creation. I mean energetic creation. New timelines, new levels of intimacy, new versions of self, new art, ideas, or pathways. Because the Merkaba doesn't care whether what's being created is physical or subtle. It responds to coherence and charge. When two people enter sacred union and both are energetically aligned, a third field is born. That third field is a creation vortex, an amplified, energetic space where new realities can be conceived. This is why sex has been distorted so heavily in the black hole realm. Because if we're disconnected from our bodies, ashamed of our desire, or looping in emotional wounding, the Merkaba can't spin cleanly. Creation becomes inverted. We manifest through distortion instead of clarity. We repeat trauma instead of birthing truth. But when we return to coherence, when our nervous system is regulated, our inner feminine and masculine are unified, and our body feels safe again, Eros returns. And when Eros returns, life moves differently. You stop looking for love outside of yourself. You stop chasing purpose. Instead, you begin to live as love in motion. You feel purpose move through you as clarity, creativity, and quiet inner knowing. Eros is your relationship to life itself. It's the energy that rises when something feels real and aligned. It's the subtle yes in your body before the mind catches up. To embody Eros is to be in partnership with your own energy system. It's the integration of your inner feminine, the part that feels, receives, and softens, and your inner masculine, the part that protects, grounds, and takes aligned action. It's what brings vitality back to your system. It's what reawakens joy, inspiration, and flow. It's what creates through resonance. You don't need a partner to feel this. This is the inner sacred marriage, and it begins the moment your inner feminine feels safe to open and your inner masculine shows up with steady presence to hold her. So when we talk about white hole embodiment and Merkaba activation, we're not just talking about energy theory. We're talking about reclaiming Eros as your compass, your creative fuel, and your living connection to God. So I'll give a quick example using my podcast process. I feel that spark of inspiration, the intuitive nudge that says, this wants to come through me. That is Eros activating as creative desire, the pure impulse to connect, express, and bring something meaningful into form. I don't have to force it. There's no black hole effort. I just follow the spark. My feminine energy receives the download. I feel the emotion behind it, the beauty of the concept, the clarity of the message. My masculine energy then steps in to give it structure. I open my laptop, write the script, record, and edit. This is sacred polarity in motion. It's my inner feminine and masculine working together in harmony. That synergy is what gets my Merkaba spinning because I'm not fighting or pushing myself. I'm in coherent flow. I finish the episode feeling energized, lit up, alive. That's because I've anchored Metatronic light through the polarity spin of my Merkaba, and that energy has become form through the creation process. What's left is a surge of creative energy, and that energy can be used in different ways because it doesn't just disappear. It's now part of my field, and I get to decide how to circulate or ground it. You don't need to do anything with Eros right away. What matters is that you don't suppress it or leak it. Let it inform your next move, whether that's action, stillness, embodiment, or devotion. And then the spiral continues. So, also, I want to add something in here. Earlier, I mentioned that there are bridge states to us working up to a 100% white hole embodiment when it comes to the Metatronic light we're anchoring in and our Merkaba spin. So, what I just said about how Eros feels, that is certainly white hole coherence. But as I mentioned, there's bridge phases here. So sometimes when I'm podcasting, I'll actually feel like a little dizzy or lightheaded. And I think that's because I'm anchoring in a lot of light and my body necessarily isn't at that 100% white hole coherent state yet. So it's like trying to anchor in this very high frequency energy, and it can make me feel a little lightheaded or dizzy. But eventually, when at 100% in all those white hole pillars, then it will feel more like this Eros and this surge of creative energy. And I have felt that before, but it is not my stabilized state yet. And also, this is the kind of stuff I'll talk about more on my Patreon behind the scenes when I talk more in the episodes behind the veil. So if that interests you, like I said, I'll link it and mention it at the end. Now let's move on and talk about how the dimensional structure ties to the Metatronic spiral. The Metatronic spiral is the architecture that unifies the dimensions. It's the sacred spin that lets consciousness move through dimensions fluidly, not hierarchically. It doesn't move upward only, it moves inward and outward at once. Your Merkaba is the light vehicle that lets you navigate these layers in coherence. So instead of climbing one way from 3D to 9D, you spiral around the center where all dimensions converge. Each turn of the spiral activates more coherence, lets more light flow through your body, and harmonizes more dimensional bandwidth. The Metatronic spiral is what makes multidimensional embodiment possible. It weaves the dimensions together through resonance. So here's a visual metaphor. Instead of a staircase, like a Fibonacci bridge, picture a multidimensional nautilus. Each chamber is a dimensional field, and our consciousness spirals through them by frequency match, not by climbing. And side note, the nautilus is often mistakenly said to grow in a perfect Fibonacci spiral, but technically, the nautilus shell grows in a logarithmic spiral which approximates the golden ratio but isn't exactly a Fibonacci sequence. However, it maintains precise proportional expansion with every new chamber, and this makes it stable, self-similar, and a coherent structure. And that's where its white hole alignment begins to show. So, what makes the Nautilus white hole aligned? In white hole mechanics, we're looking for patterns that are self-organizing, non-depleting, coherent in all directions, rooted in source-connected geometry, and able to expand without fragmenting or collapse. A Nautilus spiral embodies this beautifully. It grows outward while maintaining center coherence. Each chamber is a perfect echo of the last, but larger. The creature lives in the newest chamber, leaving the old ones intact, like past versions of self encoded in form. It's a spiral expansion without distortion, growth without disconnection, and form without collapse. This is white hole resonance. The Nautilus is a living example of how to spiral forward without losing your center. A Nautilus is a biological Merkaba in shell form. In one more physical example, the calla lily is far more aligned with Metatronic spiral architecture than most other plant growth patterns. A calla lily is a single unified spiral that folds in on itself while lifting upward. This motion is inward and upward, not additive or outward. It's more akin to a return spiral. The calla lily expresses unity through singularity. Most flowers bloom outward, one petal at a time. The calla lily spirals from center, and the calla lily is often associated with resurrection, divine elegance, sacred geometry, purity, and unity. Now let's talk about the human journey through the spiral. As humans in a bridge paradigm, we grow outward, just like the Fibonacci spiral. This is the case in both a physical and mental sense. Physically, embryos develop according to the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio during the early stages of formation. Mentally, we seek love, purpose, meaning, and God as if they're somewhere outside us. And that spiral of seeking is sacred. It's the memory of truth trying to find itself. The body grows, the mind stretches, the soul reaches. But eventually, we reach the edge of seeking. We realize the answer isn't out there, it's within. That's when the spiral turns. We begin to close the loop. We stop chasing God and start embodying God. This is the shift from the Fibonacci spiral to the Metatronic spiral. It's the moment we stop becoming and start being. This is white hole embodiment. So, we covered a lot in this episode, from sacred geometry and Merkaba mechanics to divine polarity, Metatronic light, and the architecture of coherence. But at the core of all of this is something simple. You are not just a thinker, you are not just a body. You are a living system of light, designed to flow, to create, and to stabilize clarity in a world that's often confused. White hole coherence is about becoming so coherent, so present in your own system, that distortion can't stick. That's what makes your Merkaba possible. And as you continue to align with Metatronic light, you'll notice something shifts. You stop chasing answers outside of you. You stop spiraling outward in search of something more. Because the Metatronic spiral doesn't just expand, it returns. It brings you home. It reminds you that God isn't out there somewhere. God lives inside your coherence, inside your breath, your body, your tone. You are already built for this. Your system already knows how to do this. And the more you trust your own architecture, the more life will organize around your tone. So thank you for being here. As I mentioned a few times on this episode, I just launched my Patreon, and on there, I'll be giving more podcast episodes that are more unstructured and more behind the scenes. I think on there I called them behind the veil. So those podcast episodes will show a little more behind the scenes of my own embodiment journey. Also, I've mentioned the White Spiral Records on other podcasts. I'll be putting them on Patreon, but they'll be for free. And then I'll have a paid tier if you want to listen to more behind the scenes podcast and extra bonus content. So thanks again, and I love you all and have a great day.